Hello everyone, my name is Joker Clan and welcome to the very first Bioshock Infinite video I've done on this channel. This video in particular will be a challenge to see if I can beat Bioshock Infinite by only using vigors. I'm not going to say exactly what vigors are, but I'm pretty sure you'll figure that out along the way. After I blacked out, I woke up on a rowing boat with these two little yellow raincoat fellows rowing me to an obvious lighthouse after they gave me a box. But regardless, we're still going to a lighthouse, and that's what you're gonna do, whether you like it or not. Entering the lighthouse, there wasn't all that much to do, but I did find someone that didn't do their Duolingo practice, in which the owl had come and got them. After sitting in the most comfortable chair in the world, walls started appearing out of the blue, with one wall in particular that had a hole in it so I could see where exactly I'll be kidnapped to. They don't exactly have standards, do they? But, you know, it's a Sky City. What do you expect? After that little chair kerfuffle, I should say, I appeared in the magical wonderland of Colombia. No, not the one in South America, the one in the sky. Hold on, the one in the sky? There's a Colombia in the sky? Oh dear Lord! That is a scientific wonderment right there. I mean, at least it's not in the sea. But hey, I might argue, it's a city in the sky that worships Father Comstock. After that little rocket ride, I ended up in a church that worships Father Comstock for whatever reason. But, you know, who might argue? There's a church that worships the flying spaghetti monster. A gift, a man who was leaning on a wall and talking to himself, and a voxophone were all found in the church. Nothing else at all. Not one thing else was found in the church. And silver eagles are found in the church as well. At the bottom of the church, I was forced to join a circle and be baptized, whether I liked it or not. After Booker's super flat pancake head got submerged in holy water, he came to this place, his old job, and witnessed New York be set ablaze by, aforementioned priest. After Booker's super relaxing dream, he woke up and found himself in a puddle surrounded by the three horsemen of presidents. Shortly after gaining control of Booker DeWitt, I came across the first and most frequent problem of this challenge: my controller freaking out. After temporarily dealing with the controller problem, I walked to the door and got my first glimpse of Colombia. After talking to Hot Dog Alex, I entered a building where I found a kinetoscope and a voxophone near a safe. After listening to Father Comstock speak for an ungodly amount of time, I attended a festival. I wanted to skip this, but I had no choice. The police officer forced me to watch it whether I liked it or not. And that's going to be a running joke for this video, whether you like it or not. After Booker showed off his impressive parkour skills, he, borrowed some money from a friend. After being told to not pick number 77 in the raffle, Booker found his very first vigor, called Possession.
They're all ears.
After being given the gift of Possession, Booker immediately used it on the ticket booth machine. Afterwards, he got caught between deciding heads or tails. Considering there's like, what, 12 on heads and none on tails, he obviously chose tails. And then he saw something just a tiny bit strange. A statue. Oh, and he also had the false shepherd mark on his hand, but we all know that's nothing more than a coincidence. After picking the forbidden number, that being number 77, the cops pulled him up and told him the copter doesn't solve anything. Booker responded appropriately. With the money I borrowed from a friend, I bought an upgrade for possession so that I can possess human enemies as well. And it was at this point when my controller decided to freak out once again. Only difference is, this is the worst possible time for it to freak out. I made short work of the enemies on the ground with my possessed turret, but sadly, the enemies made short work of my possessed friend. Thankfully, my possessed friend had loads of salts items on his corpse, but even that wasn't enough for me to use possession once again. I was seriously low on health and my controller wasn't getting any better. I had no salts and no ideas. But just in the nick of time I found a health kit. It didn't exactly do much, but it was better than nothing. And even better news, my controller decided to finally work. Until later. My controller once again temporarily stopped working. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna jump around. You can't hit me if my feet aren't on the ground. When I thought all hope was lost again, I found a dollar bill and bought as much health and as much salts as I could possibly afford. This was the hardest part of the journey so far. The very first Fireman encounter. Now remember, I can't use my pistol, so I can only use possession. So how did I do it? Well, first I possessed the gun turret over here, but unfortunately the Fireman made quick work of him. And then I realised that the gate didn't close. So I realised that, you know, there's 2 more turrets that I can use. So I used one of them and it finished him off. Afterwards, I got my very first offensive vigor called Devil's Kiss. Now, that made the run infinitely easier because now I can do more than just possess different enemies to attack other enemies. And instead, I can just throw a firebomb in their direction and, you know, blast them. It was at this point where I considered wasting all of my ammo so I wouldn't accidentally shoot someone. This proved time-consuming and all-out useless, but it didn't stop me at the time. Another battle happened, but I just swept the floor as usual. I entered a new area, and it was at this point where my controller really decided to freak out. And when I mean really decided to freak out, I mean it kept on swerving left and right. Like, I had no control over what Booker was doing. He'll just move left and right over and over and over again. But you don't have to hear about all that. What you do have to hear is that I collected every single gear piece and every single infusion in that place. And what did I do with my infusions? Well, good question. I put 4 of them into salts and 1 of them into my shield. And now I've found myself in this predicament. You see, I can't skyline attack enemies, so I've got to land near them. But it's going to be pretty difficult when there's enemies everywhere. Unlike now. I found myself in another battle which was not hard at all, especially considering that I have not 1, but 2 vigors, and one of them is very useful for human enemies. Now I wanted to get a key to open a box. I don't know what exactly is in the box, but this bloke said,
"There is something dear inside."
Another battle occurred in which this one was slightly more difficult because there was a Fireman in there. And Firemen are immune to the Devil's Kiss vigor, so I had to use possession to possess as many things as I could use to take out the Fireman. But unfortunately that didn't work, so I just settled for possessing the Fireman and fleeing the scene. After possessing the Fireman, I entered a little kind of temple place that worships John Wilkes Booth. And there I found a little room where these people are having, I guess you could say, a ceremony. But I just interrupted that ever so briefly, just to say hi. After fleeing the Zealot gathering, I found the Fireman once again, but after accidentally hitting him, I had to reload a previous checkpoint. Arriving back in time, and back at the Zealot camp, I just knew things would be different. Instead of running away from the Zealots, I would defeat every single one of them. So naturally, I laid a trap down in the middle of their little triangle thing, and then it blew up. Thus summoning a gun trap to, well, help me. In the midst of all this chaos, I found an infusion, and naturally I chose salts. When I found the key to the box, I claimed the valuables held inside, including an infusion, which I put salts into, a health kit, and a salts bottle. I arrived in a house, and there I found the Fireman. It was between me and him. Thankfully, the people respawned so I could at the very least hold my ground. But even that wasn't enough. So once again, I fled to the Zealot University. In the university, I did find a lot of things to pick up. including a voxophone, and I also found the Wrath of Duolingo Owl Part 2. And now it was time to face off against the Crow. This wasn't hard at all. I only used 3 Devil's Kisses on him, then he went down like a snowman in summer. And now I have my third vigor, Murder of Crows. It's useful by itself as a distraction, and to chip off an enemy's health, but combined with Devil's Kiss or Shock Jockey, it can turn the crows into Fire Crows or Electro Crows. And right away I could use my newly found gift to hold them where they were, then use Devil's Kiss to finish them off. This telescope reminded me of where I needed to go, then I proceeded to head there immediately. As soon as I entered, these friendly friends invited me to their party. I politely declined, then went to look for the tower. Now, about 90% of this level is just a Skyline tutorial, so I'm going to be skipping a whole load of this chunk. If you don't like it, well then there'll be a link in the description for like the first about 90 to 100 minutes of just raw footage, just to prove that I'm not cheating. When I eliminated this poor sod, he did some sick freestyle moves. Once again, I thought emptying all of my rounds in my clip would be a viable option, but once again, that proved to be not true. And now I have finally come face to screen with Comstock. I tried threatening him by aiming down my sights, and then trying to shoot him, but he knew that he was invincible. And he also knew that I couldn't do it, because this was a challenge to beat with only vigors. After the Zeppelin went down in flames, Booker narrowly escaped, catching a skyline and ultimately saving himself, but no one else. And then he entered Monument Island in order to repay his debt. I entered Monument Tower, and in there I found a machine that turns old and worn things into a more desirable version of what they used to be. I also found a video recorder and a bunch of new photos sitting in a darkroom left to process. I met Elizabeth and ran out of the tower away from Big Bird. And when I say ran, I mean Elizabeth ran. I just walked at a steady pace. Big Bird showed his face, and then Elizabeth and I took a leap of faith and ended up in Battleship Bay. In Battleship Bay, I socialised with the locals, and by socialised I mean eavesdropped, whether they liked it or not. I also took part in a fitness activity which I obviously won at, and everyone else lost, because I'm me. I also had to choose between the bird and the cage. You'll understand the irony behind that later, but obviously I chose the bird. This gentleman stabbed me in the hand, by accident of course, and I got in another fight. This one was a bit difficult because there was something I didn't tell you. I changed the controller layout so that it's more of a standard shooter, and by God this changed things more than I thought it did. So, changing the vigors is R1 and firing them is R2. Previously, changing them was L1 and firing them was L2. So yeah, this got out of hand quickly and I changed it back almost immediately after I died. I found another infusion, I put it in salts, of course, and went to find Elizabeth. She didn't exactly try to pull the lever, so I did it for her, one-handed. Weird flex, but okay. Elizabeth fixed my bleeding hand with something, and then we went to Soldier's Field. In Soldier's Field, I found another infusion, which I put into salts. And I also found a miniature theme park design, but when the gate crashed, I decided to open it with my bare fists. No vigors required. After opening the gate, I found a salts machine, and straight after I found the First Lady airship. Afterwards, I bought an upgrade to Devil's Kiss, which allows many clusters to explode all around the target, therefore meaning you have crowd control. I caught this dude having a sleep at work. Shame on him is all I have to say. And I also caught a glimpse of something utterly useless right now. I wanted to talk to this pretty crystal in a chamber, but just like all my friends, it left me. And now we're on the hunt for decent electricity, I mean my new Vigor shock jockey. I found myself in yet another fight, and for some reason this was a lot harder than the other ones. Maybe it's because I changed my controls back to marksman type, or the fact that these enemies are slightly stronger. I have no idea. Anyway, it was a good time to use the Souls machine I had found previously. During the elevator ride, Elizabeth showed off yet another thing I won't be using in this challenge. 'Twas here I found my fourth vigor, Bucking Bronco. What Bucking Bronco does is levitates enemies in the air and can be used as a trap version as well. Outside waiting for me were a bunch of hooligans, and Elizabeth didn't even think of helping me. But thankfully all four of my vigors were effective against them. I found some sort of code book that can decipher some type of Vox code. But then I forgot what I was doing, then accidentally progressed with the main story. Now comes the dreaded sniper bit. I thought this would be the end for the challenge. But no, you don't actually have to shoot the sniper. All you have to do is just run past him. So yeah, not all that hard. But you do have to kill all his friends though, so not all good. Slates' men weren't hard at all. The first encounter I set a trap. The Wounded Knee encounter I just died so I could take on the Crow. And then the Boxer Rebellion battle happened. In short, I failed the run. In long, I tried over and over and over and over again so that I could try and take him out with only 4 vigors. The most effective one was Murder of Crows, but even that didn't work. Even on my best try, I used possession on him so that the other guys would shoot him. That got him down to half health. And then I just used Murder of Crows on him relentlessly. And that still didn't kill him. Jeez. He was impossible to kill. With only vigors at least. So I shot him, and that's how I failed the challenge. But I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to see how far I can go, and how little times I can use the gun. Elizabeth showed me some more of her tears. I did not use the gun turret one, for obvious reasons. The very first Patriot encounter was not hard at all. Like 3 Devil Kisses traps and 1 bomb. Boom, gone in a flash. After defeating the Patriot, we went to look for Phil Swift's Electro Juice. But of course, Slate just had to steal it. The second Fireman battle was far easier because there were loads of Souls bottles that I could use, so I could just possess him or shoot him with crows. The second Patriot encounter wasn't all that much harder either. You just spam him with Devil's Kisses, then all of a sudden he's gone. I spared Slate because I followed through with all my challenges, and then got my 5th vigor, Shock Jockey. What Shock Jockey can do is stun enemies. That's it. And deal a small amount of damage, but accompanied with Devil's Kiss or Undertow, which I'll get later, it will be very powerful. I defeated the other Fireman using Big Flock of Black Birds, and defeated the Patriot with Doom Demon Affectionate Hug. I got Elizabeth to open a tear, then I appeared on top of the tear, and on top of the tear I contemplated life and its choices, and what choices I've made for me to end up doing this god-awful challenge. After taking a look back at my life choices, I rode the gondola to the First Lady airship. I took a good look at a guy doing not so pleasant things to a Murder of Crows bottle. I found another infusion bottle, which I put into my shield, then set a course for New York. Elizabeth did a jack on Booker, and yes, to answer your guys' question, I will eventually do a challenge for Bioshock 1. I'm not sure which, but eventually I will. I got gently patted down by this, gentleman. After taking a good look at how snow was made, Booker looked at Daisy Fitzroy and listened to her rant about who made her guns or something. I didn't really listen. I just wanted to get this over and done with. At the docks I bought an upgrade to Devil's Kiss, which cost $666. How ironic. I found Elizabeth, but I got rudely interrupted by this marching band, and a train, and a hole in the wall. Or rather, not a hole in the wall. I had my very first encounter with a volley gun wielding guy, along with 2 others. I also swapped out my sniper rifle for a volley gun. I have no idea why, it'll be useless, but I did, and you'll have to live with it. I'd found Elizabeth, caught up to Elizabeth, then met the guy she told me not to worry about. who also happens to be the world champion frisbee thrower of all time. After ditching, that thing, Elizabeth and I made our way into Finkton proper to find the gunsmith or whatever he was. I'd found an infusion bottle, which belonged in my shield. I'd fought a patriot and a couple of his friends using basically exclusively Devil's Kiss. Then we arrived at the elevator. Inside the elevator, the phone rang. A massive statue of Fink was found, as well as loads of his Irish workers. At the bottom of the elevator ride, I found a guy who was not too friendly to Elizabeth. I tried to splatter his brains all across the door, but neither the game nor the challenge would let me. We arrived at Chen Lin's gun shop, but Chen Lin was nowhere to be found. Until we stumbled across his wife, Mei Lin, who said he was stuck at the Good Time Club, held prisoner by Fink. But not so fast. A handyman was sent to stop me, but he was nowhere near as challenging as I first anticipated. Just a few devil's kisses, boom, and is gone. And I also found a tear which plays music. And why is this important? Well, it's because I get to listen to it, and you don't. Inside the Good Time Club, I set shock jockey traps all over where the enemies would appear. And it worked! The Fireman got stunned enough so that I could deal a huge amount of damage with my crows, and eventually shock the crows so that they could do even more damage. It was brilliant! But at one point I was all out of salts. I thought it was the end of the challenge, again, until I found a dollar bill, in which I bought as much salts and as much health as I could possibly afford, again. Next up was the crow. This was not hard at all. Only a few Devil's Kiss bombs, then he's gone. The hardest challenge was not at all the stationary ground turrets, nor was it the motorized Patriot. It was the mosquitoes, the flying turrets. And why? Well, because when you hit them with shock jockey, they don't stay still. They keep moving. So I just, fell upon blind luck, hitting them with Devil's Kiss, and it worked somehow. After completing all of Fink's challenges, I swapped my hand cannon out for a crank gun, and swapped my volley gun out for the hand cannon. Reason being is because the crank gun, from my experience at least, has the least common ammo type found in the game. And the hand cannon, well, because it's a pistol and there's more visibility. Then I proceeded to waste all of my ammo to eliminate any temptation. Again. I'd found Slate in one of these cells, and gave him what he wanted, in the way I wanted. We found Chen Lin's cell, but unfortunately the boys with their Nerf guns got to him before we could. Okay, from here on out, I'm just gonna keep things at an absolute minimum. I'm running short on, very short on time. So I'll only document things that are extremely, absolutely noteworthy. After discovering Chen Lin was dead, I got Elizabeth to open up a tear where Chen Lin was alive, but with no tools. His wife, now Sarah Lin, got us to head to Shantytown to get his tools. But unfortunately we didn't think this all the way through. There was no way Booker and Elizabeth could carry all those heavy tools back to his shop. So Elizabeth opened up another tear, and I also found a new vigor called Charge. Very useful vigor, the closest thing I'll ever get to using my skyhook. In that tear I also found myself allied with the Vox Populi, as well as a dead Chen Lin. I almost failed the challenge again while getting to the Zeppelin, but thankfully I reloaded a checkpoint, as well as finding a new vigor called Undertow, which pushes enemies off the cliff, or you can grab them on and then just take them on for a ride. We went back on the First Lady airship, then gracefully landed in Emporia. In Port Prosperity I bought an upgrade for Undertow, which allows me to grab more enemies at one time, as well as finding a new vigor called Return to Sender, which is probably the most overpowered vigor in the entire game. Afterwards I bought an upgrade for Bucking Bronco, which suspends enemies in the air for twice as long, as well as buying an upgrade for Shock Jockey, which multiplies the amount of people that I can stun at a time. And then I took the elevator down to downtown Emporia. I had a massive scrap with the Vox Populi, and then set up a whole bunch of traps to insta-kill Lady Comstock. And this one worked as well. She died basically as soon as she spawned, as seen here. Now it's round 2 between me, my vigors, and Lady Comstock. This was not as hard as I originally anticipated. Only a few Devil's Kiss bombs, maybe a few Return to Sender hits or whatever they're called. Then, she's dead. In preparation for the final Lady Comstock encounter, I bought the second upgrade for Possession, and the first upgrade for Return to Sender, which allows me to send for less, which is what the upgrade is called. And now the final round with Lady Comstock. This wasn't much harder than the second round, or even the first round for that matter. I mean, to be fair, I'm playing on easy. And also, basically all my upgraded vigors are so overpowered. So yeah, that being said, wasn't that hard, and I went to Comstock House straight away. Big Bird attacked me again, this time actually managing to take Elizabeth away. In Comstock House, the Boys of Silence were hardly a challenge. All you have to do is just sneak past them, except for the first one. The first encounter with the Boys of Silence take up a whole heap of assaults. I also picked up a gear that would have been a lot more helpful in the Hall of Heroes battle. This jump scared me, as well as seeing New York get turned to ash, but it wasn't a dream this time. Booker was being a pioneer of productivity by turning off 2 siphons. I'd also bought 3 vigor upgrades, one for Undertow to double its reach, one for Shock Jockey to increase its stun duration, and one for Murder of Crows to also increase its stun duration. After boarding the gunship, I had to hold my position, which was very easy, especially against the mosquitoes, which were previously quite a problem. All you have to do is just a combination of Undertow and Shock Jockey over and over again, and problem solved. The final battle was coming up shortly, so to keep safe I wasted all of my ammo. I beat Comstock to death against the bird bath. It's okay, it's a cutscene, it's allowed. I also replaced the crank gun with a shotgun, because I thought of the Patriots and how there were so many of them and they all carry crank guns. But what I didn't think of was the multitude of weapon racks that I could collect shotgun ammo from. I'd managed to get Songbird as an ally, and yes, I'm allowed to use Songbird against gunships and zeppelins, but not on the ground. The final battle was going really well, until I accidentally skyline strike one of the Vox Populi, in which I had to restart the entire battle again. The second time around was going according to plan. I destroyed 3 Vox Zeppelins, and then joined Elizabeth at the bow. And did not beat Bioshock Infinite by only using vigors. But one thing I have learned from this challenge was the fact that many combinations of vigors could be used. And in fact there's a trophy for doing all 8 of them. So yeah, I may not have completed the challenge, but I went away with some education.